Hey everybody, this is Darren Van Dam and you are watching Flick Connection, the show that helps you get more out of movies. And today, I want to tell you about some movies on Netflix that are loaded with sex, blood, and bullets.
When I see you, I see blood in the water. Run deep, it runs deep. Blood in the water. I see blood in the water. Drive me, you see blood in the water.
Yeah, you heard me right. This video is going to be 20 movies that are super mature. So there is a very good chance this video is automatically demonetized because the YouTube algorithm was apparently written by a 4-year-old, but this video is sponsored by CyberGhost VPN, and later in this episode I'm going to tell you how CyberGhost VPN can help you get access to even more movies with your current Netflix subscription. But let's go ahead and get started with our first video, which is all the way at the back. It's not the worst movie on the list, but it's got the least amount of sex, blood, and bullets. I'm going to be indicating to you here how much of each of those is in the movie. There are a few on the list that are missing one of the three, but as we get further to number one, they have all three, and as we get to the top 5, they are loaded with all three. But What Happened to Monday is a sci-fi Netflix original that has a surprising amount of all three of these. There's multiple sex scenes in this, and this is one of the better movies on the list, and I feel like a lot of people overlooked it. I was one of them. I had no interest in this movie, even though I like Noomi Rapace, even though I like Willem Dafoe, even though the trailer looked good. I was really surprised at how good this movie actually was. It's really long, it's really epic, there's a ton of bullets, there's grenades, but in this future, if you have more than one child, they are quote-unquote disposed of in a way that is explained in the beginning of the movie. Things are not quite what they seem, but Noomi Rapace actually plays 7 different characters, as she has 7 sisters, each named after a day of the week because that is the day of the week they are allowed to go out on. And then one day, Monday, does not come home, and you get this kind of crazy sci-fi action movie that follows. I like this one, again, a lot more than I thought I would. If you've been passing on it and you like my normal recommendations, take a chance on this one. It's a good pick. Taking Lives, starring Angelina Jolie and Ethan Hawke, is kind of a like Seven light. It's a murder mystery, reminded me a lot of Seven, and while it is really good, it's not anywhere close to Seven good. There's a really intense sex scene with Angelina Jolie and Ethan Hawke, full Angelina Jolie nudity. If you really just wanted to watch it, you just Google it. I'm sure there's a clip that's easy to find, but the movie itself is a really good murder mystery, really good performances from them. Kiefer Sutherland has a role, and it's got, you know, your typical twists and turns and stuff, but I thought it played out really well. I've seen this one a few times. I think I even own a copy, so if you never bothered to watch this one, I feel like it's somewhat rewatchable. Like if you watched it a while ago, you could revisit it, but certainly if you've never watched it, this too is one of the better picks on the list. It's just not quite as intense as some of the ones coming up.
It's clear that this pervert plans on coming back here and murdering Brandy.
Oh my God, is that gonna happen?
It's gonna happen.
No, it's not gonna happen.
You gon' die.
All right, next on the list is one of the odder ones on this list, and that's Observe and Report. Now, this one stars Seth Rogen, Anna Faris, Ray Liotta, and I feel like when this came out, a lot of people just assumed it was gonna be like Paul Blart Mall Cop. It is not. In this movie, Seth Rogen does play a mall cop, but it is nothing like the lighthearted Paul Blart. This is a dark comedy, for sure. It's got weird sex scenes in it. It's got full frontal, slow motion male nudity, and while there's not a ton of violence, when it does occur, it's intense. It's just not pervasive throughout the whole movie, which is why I've got it back here. But if you like dark comedies and never bothered to watch this one, definitely watch it. And if you find that you don't prefer dark comedies, I would advise that you steer clear of Observe and Report.
3 out of 4 people got an STD. I got 2 people's blood on me. You do the math.
The Babysitter is another Netflix original movie that came out, I think, 2 Halloweens ago. It stars Samara Weaving, who is just a growing actress. She was just in Ready or Not, which was really cool. This movie is got cool elements, and for a made-for-TV thing, it's pretty good. It's not great. I don't recommend it highly, but I have recommended it before. But The sex in this one's mild, but you know, it's got your typical teen horror sex elements, but man, is there some blood in this one. This is a bloody, fun Halloween movie. Again, all these movies are really just for like 17 and up, and The Babysitter is a great one in that sense. It's one of those movies that's like a good Halloween watch. If you're not really in the mood for like a full-blown scare your pants off horror movie, this is more just sort of a fun slasher flick. All right, and then the biggest, most famous one on this list, and I had to include it just because there's plenty of blood and there's some boobs in this one, and that's 300. Now, to me, this is one of the better picks off of this list. I really like this movie, and I am not a fan of Zack Snyder as a director. I don't like what he's been doing with the DC universe. However, this being one of his earlier films, I think he did an amazing job of adapting from a graphic novel done by Frank Miller, who, if you don't know comic books, he's also famous for Sin City, and also famous for really turning Batman very dark in the 80s, I believe, and he did 300, and again, this one is one of the best adaptations from a graphic novel to screen because it stayed so true to Frank Miller's drawings. And it's just a stunning kind of visual feast. And then the story plays out too. Like, the story doesn't get lost in it as well, which is why I really like it. It's just really kind of intense, fun watch that I have not seen in a while, and I probably should revisit it before it's gone. Cam is a Netflix original movie that damn near breaks the sex scale on this episode. It also ranks pretty high on the blood scale, but this is about a cam girl, which is basically an independent porn star. She works from home, she works on a webcam, has followers, much like the person you're watching now, except she gets naked and performs sex acts. Really not a whole lot of difference between her and me, but this movie's way wilder than you would think. Yes, there's a lot of sexual content, but it's got this really creepy supernatural element. Like I said, blood. The opening scene for this movie is crazy. It really hooked me and drew me into a movie that I really wasn't particularly interested in the first place. It feels a lot like an episode of Black Mirror. So if that sounds like you, definitely check this one out. Like I said, it's weird, but it's not like, it's kind of got like, it's got a little bit of a smart edge to it that surprised me as well. It's not as just silly as some of the other picks on this list have been. And I've got another Netflix original, not the last one on this list either, but I'm getting there. The Perfection. Now, this one actually really surprised me. I don't know what I thought. I guess I thought it was going to be a horror movie, and while it is like a horror subgenre flick, to me, the way I described it is it seemed a lot more like a Korean drama, because Korean dramas, movies like Old Boy, have very, very dark themes. They're very graphic. They're intense sexually. There's blood. There's violence. And this movie has all of that. Now, it doesn't have it in droves, but when it does appear, it's fairly intense. The sex stuff does deal with abuse, and there are several movies on this list that do deal with sex abuse, and I can't really flag all of them. Sex abuse is the one area where I do kind of believe in trigger warnings, because if you're a victim of it, you don't really necessarily want to see it in a movie. However, you know, this movie does not glorify it. If anything, it glorifies revenge. I'll leave it at that, but this is a weird, wonky one that could have easily gone off the rails, and while some people do not like this movie, I happen to think all of the weirdness worked together really, really well here. Lifechanger, another super weird one. I'm gonna stop saying that because there's a ton of weird ones on this list, but this one features a shapeshifter, and the shapeshifter needs to consume a host, I guess you would still call him a host, in order to change. So they want to take over someone's life, look and sound exactly like them, and live as them for however long they can get away with it. They have to drain the life out of them. This movie opens with a nude woman covered in blood after the shifter had just kind of consumed somebody new. And the shifter consumes a lot of people in this movie, has to dispose of bodies, assumes the identity of one guy so that he can have sex with that guy's love interest, and it's got all of the elements, I think, except for bullets. I don't think there's a whole lot of shooting in this one, but hey, violence, blood, and sex in this one. And to me, it just feels like a long episode of The X-Files. I loved The X-Files, at least the original series. And this, if you loved The X-Files, or you like that kind of just dark sci-fi stuff, this is a great one. Here's a good example of not all the movies on this list being great. Now, I will say, I've seen them all, and I enjoyed them all. That doesn't make them all good movies. But Darc, spelled D-A-R-C, is a revenge movie, and it's super bloody. Swords, guns, buckets of blood. It's about a guy who was raised sort of in a brothel, so you got the sex element there. It's not overly sexual, but there's, you know, strip clubs and brothels and half-naked women and the whole thing, and it's just got one of those kind of vibes. It feels like a low-rent John Wick. Now, don't misunderstand me. It's nowhere near as good as John Wick, but if you really, really like John Wick, there's a good chance you might at least like Darc. I enjoyed it, but I also am able to kind of recognize, okay, this is done on a lower budget. They did a good job with the budget that they had, and I kind of watch it from a filmmaking process as well, and I enjoyed it for that reason. Not for everybody, but if you find that you can watch movies that way, Darc is a good pick.
Let it go! Let it go! Let it go!
And then Swordfish stars Halle Berry, John Travolta, and is one of Hugh Jackman's earlier movies as he was just becoming Wolverine. He plays a hacker. There's a lot of violence in this one. Hugh Jackman receives a blowjob while trying to hack into something in a very short period of time. Halle Berry famously was nude in this one and supposedly got a huge paycheck for it, even though she disputes it. But the movie got a lot of buzz, mainly for Halle Berry's boobs, because it's not that good of a movie. However, if you want to turn your brain off, like, a lot of these are just good midnight movies. You get to see explosions and gunfire, and, you know, sometimes it's just good to unplug and watch something like that, and Swordfish is just like almost the epitome of that type of a movie, and it's really glossy and really polished looking too. It just doesn't have a lot going on under the surface, which is fine. Now, before we get to the other 10 on this list, I gotta tell you about CyberGhost VPN. They are a fantastic sponsor for this show because they allow you to watch Netflix in other countries. There are different movies in the UK, in Germany, in France. My US viewers, you can watch those. My international viewers, you can watch all of these movies that I'm talking about that are only available in the US. All you gotta do is you gotta get a CyberGhost VPN account. It's easy to set up, and you can sign up for as little as $2.75 a month, depending on which plan you pick. And just as an example, Netflix UK has a ton of movies that are not available on Netflix US, including A Simple Favor, Fast and Furious 8, Tomb Raider, American Made, Rick and Morty, for another really great show, Baby Driver, Blade Runner 2049, The Foreigner with Jackie Chan, Suicide Squad, Mile 22 with Mark Wahlberg, The Equalizer with Denzel Washington, Den of Thieves, which I really liked, Sicario 2, just to name a few. You can watch all of those with a basic CyberGhost VPN account. It's really cool, and they give you a 45-day money-back guarantee, so if you sign up for it and just find you're not even taking advantage of it, cancel the thing. They offer 24/7 customer support. I have been using this service for a while now, and I've never needed any assistance because it's so intuitive and it always works. But if you need help, they are there to help you. And you can use it simultaneously on up to 7 devices. Use it on Windows, Mac, iOS, Android, Fire Stick, Linux, and more. That's enough for me, but to boot, it's a VPN. It keeps your browsing secure. It blocks malicious websites. It's a good thing to have. A lot of people are signing on to them now, and especially like you EU viewers, if YouTube content is blocked, this will help you get around that as well. But let's move on with the rest of the list.
There's nothing you can do for me?
I've got a rope in that shed over there. I could take you out to that tree where Marin died, and I could string you up.
Horns is one I've recommended a few times recently, so I'll be brief, but this is actually based on a book written by the son of Stephen King. It's got its own flavor, but clearly it's got some influences from King, but it stars Daniel Radcliffe, who wakes up one morning and he's growing horns out of his head. There is a traumatic event that maybe initiates some of this. There's some weird supernatural stuff that's just very different. I didn't feel like this movie was rehashing something I had seen already, which gives it super, super big points for me. There's sex scenes, there's demons, there's crazy death scenes. This one's fun. Another really good Halloween watch that I wouldn't classify as like a scary horror movie, but that's just spooky and creepy and weird and fun to watch at Halloween. And above all, it's on this list because it is really just for adults only. Speaking of adults only, Polar. the Netflix original movie where Mads Mikkelsen plays a hitman. This one's also based on a graphic novel. This one is super adult, really, really graphic sex scene, plus a couple of other things that the movie opens with. Not only is there a ton of bullets, there's a ton of blood. This movie is wild. Now, while, again, I didn't feel like cinematically it was a masterpiece, it was so over the top and so wild that I really enjoyed it. And to boot, the way the story plays out, I feel like it's just the beginning, so I'm hoping that Netflix felt that it was successful enough to do a sequel. They definitely set it up for that. Another one, it's not like John Wick, but I think John Wick fans are really gonna dig this one as well. Spring Breakers was featured on my hidden gems list just last week. I'll put a link to that in the description. But this one definitely checks all the boxes. A lot of bullets, a lot of guns, a lot of butts and boobs and bikinis and fair amount of blood, a lot of drugs, and James Franco plays a drug dealer named Alien, easily one of his weirdest roles that he'll probably ever have. The Spring Breaker girls in the bikinis for most of the movie actually feature a couple of Disney child stars, which makes this one even weirder. And now this is another one that's not for everybody. Like, if you like movies to have a formula and a structure that's familiar to you, you're not going to like Spring Breakers. If you like to be surprised and to experience something new and different, Spring Breakers is a really great way to go.
Well, you didn't bring me along because I look like the black nerd from Die Hard. Because I don't.
Now, I feel like Game Over Man has the best balance between all of the elements. While it's not a sexy movie, Adam Devine has his member out for most of the movie. There's a lot of bullets, injuries, blood. This one's kind of fun because this is from the guys that did the show Workaholics. They star in it, they wrote it, produced it, and it's basically like a comedy version of Die Hard. They're trapped in this office building where a hostage situation is broken out, and they're like the least capable guys to handle it, but they've taken it upon themselves, and you get some really fun sequences. So if you're a fan of Die Hard, this one's a really fun watch. If you liked Workaholics, this one's almost a must watch. I was a little disappointed because I feel like even though it's a feature film, it wasn't as good as almost any episode of Workaholics, but I might have just judged it a little bit more harshly, but those guys are hilarious, and I thought the movie was really funny. Now, Officer Downe might be the worst movie on this list. However, I did watch it, and I did have fun watching it. It's colorful, it's bloody, it's crazy. Another one based on a graphic novel series. This one, again, just checks all the boxes. And it's a midnight movie. Like, do not sit down to dinner to watch this one, or do not make plans to watch this one. This is one, if you're up late, you're hard up for something to watch, and you just want to watch something crazy and weird, check out Officer Downe. But it's a futuristic cop movie where there's this cop who's invincible, or at least they can regenerate him, and there's these gun-running nuns that some of them dress really sexy, and it's weird, but the violence in it is just over the top. This is a Grindhouse flick that's a lot of fun. Not very good, though. Okay, so we'll jump from one of the weakest picks off of this list to one of the best movies on this list, in my opinion, and that's The Cell with Jennifer Lopez. Now, this one also stars Vincent D'Onofrio as the villain, and he kills it, literally. Vince Vaughn has a really sort of like regular old detective role in this one, and this is a just masterpiece visually. Now, the story works, it all threads together well, the performances are good, all those elements work well, but visually this is one of the most impressive movies on Netflix right now, and it's not just beautiful, it is dark with a capital D. It is a serial killer's nightmare, literally. So it's in the near future. Jennifer Lopez plays a psychologist or psychiatrist, I can't remember the difference, but she gets projected into the mind of a serial killer that has been apprehended in order to try to find the location of his latest victim, who may still be alive. But while she's in there, it is just this crazy nightmare. If you ever saw What Dreams May Come, it's kind of like that. It's like this hellscape that she gets thrown into, and it's really just almost like an acid trip of a movie, but again, it all works together. It's just amazing, amazing visually. If you've never seen it, make it the first one you watch off of this list. Another one that's a great, great Halloween pick. Another great Halloween pick is American Psycho. Again, checking all the boxes. Crazy weird sex scenes in this one. Christian Bale's a maniac. He's covered in blood for half of the movie. Not a ton of bullets, but again, just violence, chainsaws, axes, not hatchets, axes, business cards. Those of you that know the movie know what I'm talking about. This is another one that's just a crazy movie. A lot of people do not like this movie, but you cannot go into a movie like this with certain expectations or to expect it to be like something you've seen before. This is its own thing, and it's weird and it's wild and it works, and it's a reason it's a cult classic. If you want to become part of the culture and get on board with this cult classic, check it out before it leaves Netflix. All right, so this is the hardest, even though Officer Downe might have been the weakest one on the list, Dog Eat Dog is the hardest one to recommend. And it's one of the hardest movies on this list. But it stars Nicolas Cage, Willem Dafoe. It's about just some criminals. And it's actually directed by Paul Schrader, who's most famous for having written Taxi Driver. Now, his directing style is really odd. He did First Reformed last year with Ethan Hawke. Really weird movie. Dog Eat Dog manages to be so much weirder. The movie opens up with Willem Dafoe doing hard drugs in this pink room covered in flowers. And it's his weird girlfriend's house, and then, mild spoilers, the first 3 minutes of the movie, he proceeds to murder her in a horrific fashion, and that's how they get you into this movie. It's crazy, it's weird, it doesn't make a lot of sense, but if you're into again, another midnight movie that's just gonna mess with your brain, if you wanna just experience something that's just truly like just avant-garde bullshit, check out Dog Eat Dog, but if none of that sounds appealing to you, whatever you do, just do not watch this movie. All right, one of my favorite picks off of this list for a couple of reasons I'm about to explain is Terrifier, the only horror movie, the only true horror movie on this list. It features Art the Clown, and it is a brutal slasher flick. One of the reasons I love this movie is, one, I really enjoyed it the first time I saw it, but then I proceeded to get 3 of the stars on the show. Jenna Cannell has been on multiple times. There's links to all of this in the description. Jenna and I sat right back there at the bar, read mean comments about ourselves, had a lot of fun doing that. Catherine Corcoran, who has the most brutal death I've ever seen in a movie ever, honestly, and I see a lot of movies. She's in it. One of my most viewed podcast clips ever features her describing her death scene. There's a link to that in the description, but watch it after you see the movie for sure. And then Gino Caffarelli, who's in The Irishman, coming up. He has a very small role as well. He was my first guest ever on the show, so this movie has a special place within the Flick Connection community, and they're making a sequel. So if you haven't seen it yet, you want to watch one of the most brutal horror movies I have ever seen, check out Terrifier.
This is what Dwayne does with the girls you sell him.
Well, I've only sold him one, and that's her, so yeah, I guess so.
And you're okay with that?
What Dwayne does is his own business. Okay, that girl has to go either way, and I could kill her myself or, you know, make a few extra bucks. I figured make a few extra bucks.
And then the last one on the list is the one that inspired me to do this whole list, and it just got added to Netflix recently, so I know a lot of you have not seen it, and that is 68 Kill. Now, I watched this one with no expectations, and while it's not the best movie on this list, it has the best balance between all of these, or at least it has the most violence, blood, and sex. It's about a guy who's obsessed with this smoking hot girlfriend who is a horrible person. We as the audience know right away she is a horrible person, and he is just blind. He cannot see it. I've had friends like that. We've all had friends like that. The lead guy in the movie is that guy. And then this movie just continues to get crazier and crazier, and it is so funny. The lead actress is an absolute maniac, and she really sells it. She does a great job. And the movie just continues to go down this like crazy rabbit hole. I found it to be thoroughly entertaining the whole way through. Some of the sex in the movie is kind of hot. Some of it is far from it. It's just horrible. Particularly one scene that takes place in the back scene of a gas station. Ugh. But I had a lot of fun watching this one. I hope you do too. Take my warning seriously. These are very graphic movies. They got more and more graphic as we got down the list. So if you don't like that kind of stuff, don't watch these movies. But I have fun watching them because I know it's just a movie. I know it's fake blood. I enjoy it. I hope a lot of you do as well. I think you will. Take a quick second to thank all the Patreon supporters in the comments below. Here are their names of people donating $5 and above. If you've been watching the show for a while and you feel like you get a lot of value out of it, please consider becoming a Patreon supporter. You can at least click the link and see what the benefits are to becoming one. At the very least, you get your name up there, maybe even get a free t-shirt. But I will keep making videos not exactly like this one, as long as you keep watching them. But thanks for checking out this special episode, and you will see me on the next one.